So, hello and welcome to the brand new Sports News Blitz podcast brought to you by the Sports News Blitz website. My name is Matthew and I'm joined with my co host Sam here. If you'd like to say hello, Sam.
Hello.
And today we have got an incredibly special guest joining us all the way from Germany, who is currently following England around the Euros. It's Mr. John Murray.
Hello to you both.
Thank you ever so much for joining us today and fitting us into your, I can imagine, incredibly busy schedule preparing for the England matches whilst you're out there. How has it been following England in the Euros so far?
Stressful. It's been as stressful here doing this, watching them from close quarters, as it has from the outside, really, and all of that after such a promising start, wasn't it, in the opening game when got the early goal, played quite well in the early stages against Serbia, but since then it's been an almighty struggle, hasn't it? But they're still in it.
We're still going strong. So to start this off, we wanted to get to know you just slightly better in terms before we go into England and your career, which is incredibly esteemed. So it's a bit random. What's your favourite film, John?
My favourite film would probably be something like Casablanca. I bet neither of you have seen that.
I was going to say, I can't say I've seen it before.
Matthew?
I haven't seen it, no. Is it one that you should recommend us to watch?
It is an all-time classic. Such a good story. Brilliant acting.
I'll give it a watch tonight.
What was that, Sam?
I'll give it a watch tonight, I think.
Yeah.
The
other one, it was going to be a toss-up. I was going to go Brief Encounter.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's very,
okay.
Very good.
Yeah, that one's heard of, but I haven't seen either. And also, I just want to know, do you have a favourite song? Is there something that comes to mind, settle the pre-match nerves?
I would say, actually, no. I love my music, absolutely love it. I listen to music all the time, every day. But I wouldn't say I've got a favourite piece of music, actually. I like all sorts. So yeah, that's a more difficult question. That one.
What was the last song you listened to then? Maybe.
I'm big at the moment. Barry Can't Swim. I love that sort of thing. That's what I'm well into at the moment. I listen to a lot of. I tell you, I really rate. I think she's absolutely fantastic. Is Shana Larry. If you've heard any of her programs and stuff, which is like the sort of chill music. She's absolutely superb. I think she's a brilliant broadcaster.
Mm. Oh, fantastic! Well, thank you very much. We've got to know you slightly better. So I want to speak about England at the Euros. Obviously, you're following them around at the moment around Germany, and that's incredible. How has it been almost commentating on your home nation? I can imagine the emotion's a bit different to the domestic clubs you might follow.
Yeah, massively. I find myself increasingly, certainly at the last two tournaments, feeling almost sick when I'm about to go to follow England, because I feel more invested in commentating on England than I do on any club team at any time. Even if it's the scenario whereby I go off to cover, Manchester City, Arsenal in the Champions League, something like that, where you are, even though, as we have to be, impartial, you're right down the middle, clearly. I'm very well aware of the fact that probably the majority of people who would listen to that sort of commentary would want Manchester City or Arsenal to win and go through. It's good for us professionally if the English team, British team progresses, because that carries on our route through that tournament. With England, it is totally different because I am English, and I do feel hugely invested in following Gareth Southgate's England, which has been, I've seen the whole story. I've seen the whole thing develop from the start, what it turned into, the ups and downs that there've been, and I have always felt that it needs a final chapter, and we are where we are with it here, which was unexpected, really, that it was going to be quite like it's been. So, going to the match the other day, the Slovakia match, and even the Slovenia match before it, but more so the Slovakia match, when you think, well, this could be it. This could be the end of it here. And if things don't go England's way, this is really a failure to finish the story, which, I have to say, I don't want it to be. So so that was some relief when things turned out the way that they did last Sunday night.
It is amazing almost how that we're still in the tournament, but that is the main thing. Do you genuinely believe we could go all the way and win it, or nah?
At the moment, I don't really. I just think there's too much wrong. But I mean, they've got the talent there. They've got the team. They've got the talent. They've got the players who are capable of getting 3 more results. I mean, I just feel that it feels like it's going to come to an end sooner or later, but you don't know. And they've had a week to work on this, but I don't know. It just feels that the whole feeling around it, they're saying all the right things, but the proof that we're seeing on the pitch isn't convincing at the moment. But let's see what Sunday night did for them. Maybe it'll do something magical and suddenly it'll all click. Or alternatively, maybe there'll have to be a couple of changes that do actually tweak things. We'll see.
Yeah, they made some changes, didn't they? On I think it was on Sunday night, with the Saka came into left back and provided that bit more of an overlap. Do you think that's something we could obviously you can see a lot better than we can, you're there firsthand. Is that something you think we should implement more often? Maybe a Saka at left back? Any other changes you think, if you were Southgate, how would you be lining up?
Well, I think we saw all sorts of things during the course of the game on Sunday, where his hand was kind of forced by events that happened during the match. So therefore, you saw 3 central defenders at one point. You saw Saka as left wing back, and I think Palmer has certainly caught the eye. But I'm really not sure he'll make too many changes. He'll have to make that change in defence, which might force his hand. But I just think he stubbornly believes that what they've got there is going to be good enough to make them progress. But if you're saying, what do I think? I think it's going to be quite a radical change. No, I don't. I think they'll maybe just be maybe 1 or 2 changes, something like that.
So Sam, we've spoken a little bit about it, haven't we? We had a chat the other day about what we would do, and I like the fact that Mainu has been brought into it more, into that central midfield role alongside Declan Rice. Do you think that's kind of almost helped the stability of the team a little bit in that midfield?
I think so. Although if he were to go 3 central defenders, maybe that would put Mainu's position under pressure, because I presume it would be 3-4-3. You would think that Walker would be one of those central defenders. You would think that Alexander-Arnold would be the right wing back, and therefore, if you're still going to have the front 3, that would surely mean Rice and Bellingham would be the 2 in the middle as part of the 4, and you would be looking for one of them to step in. But I don't know. I honestly don't think, because before the tournament, Gareth Southgate did say that wasn't something that he was thinking of. 3 central defenders. He was not planning to do that, but maybe circumstances have changed things.
It does almost seem like, without bringing a left-footed left back that's fit, it does almost seem that there needs to be a change. I don't think Konsa can play that position, and Trippier seems to be struggling enough. So maybe a cause for a change in the 3 at the back, but it doesn't seem very Gareth Southgate over his time.
But of course, Luke Shaw might be fit, but we don't know how fit he is. And I thought it was interesting that, as we speak here, yesterday, Luke Shaw was due to speak to the media, and then there was a late change. We don't know what the reason was for that, whether that means that, he was in contention. Now he's not in contention. I don't know, but I think they would quite simply just look more settled and more balanced if he was there.
It'd be amazing, wouldn't it, if he could come back in time?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think a Luke Shaw would kind of provide that extra defensive stability, and that would really help us out. At the moment, that's a bit up in the air. Looking back at the game on Sunday, I've seen a clip online of your commentary, which my dad showed me actually when Bellingham's goal went in, and I'm sorry I couldn't name who your co-commentator was, but you two were having a Matt Upson. Sorry, yes, you were having an absolute whale of a time. It looked fantastic. Can you try and almost describe that emotion for us when that overhead kick went in?
I think it was the relief as much as anything else, because I'd kind of given up on it. I have to confess, as probably millions of others had. I just didn't think it was coming. And again, a little bit like, even though the performance is nowhere near what they want, if you think the Slovenia match, they had chances, and they had chances in the latter part of the match against Slovakia as well. Right at the post, they had it from Kane. The follow-up as well from Kane from the Rice effort that hit the post. It just felt that it wasn't coming, and again, things happen in matches. I thought the early bookings for England in that match, it just felt like a bad sign. The fact that Gay got that early booking, I thought they're going to get a man sent off in this match, and it just had that feeling that things weren't going to go their way. So therefore, naturally, in my position as well as doing the commentating, I'm also thinking, in the light of what I've said to you, I'm thinking I'm going to have to go downstairs now and interview Gareth Southgate after what has been a failure. They're going to go out to Slovakia, and I know how that's going to be portrayed, and that is the end. That's it. So that's in my mind. Sorry, Sam.
Sorry, I was saying, do you think he would have, if they had gone out then and there, do you think he would have resigned in that interview then?
I don't know whether he would on the spot.
Yeah.
But I think, at some, I'm sure that would have been the way that it's been. And the fact that Gareth Southgate's always said, as he said after the Euros, when he was thinking about his future, he did come up with that phrase that he didn't want to outstay his welcome. And I feel the reaction that he's had here would make him think that he had outstayed his welcome. So all of that was going around in my mind. And then they equalise. And that's like, it's the ultimate test of what I do as a commentator, to try and come up with the words. And very often when things happen like that, it's such a shock that it's quite hard to say exactly what you would have wanted to say, but it's my job to say something. That's what I came up with at on this particular occasion. And then, of course, the second half, it's a real shock as well. That they scored so quickly. And again, it's I suppose that's what I do from having done this all these years and done however many scores of commentaries every season that you actually.
The last thing I'd have in that moment would be words. I feel like I'd just be shouting. So,
yeah. I mean, I can figure, as ever with broadcasting, and whenever you're in this kind of situation, you always immediately afterwards think, I wish I'd said that. I wish I'd said the other. But the fact is that you've said what you've said, and you can't go back on it. That's how I always look at commentary. You have to settle with what you said at the time.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's a really exciting emotion for you to feel as a commentator. What's the and I suppose at home it's a bit different because we're not there watching the games in real time. We're not in the atmosphere of Germany in the Euros. What is because the general feel here is that we are massively underperforming. Is that the same in Germany? Is that how the fans are feeling as well? Is that the feel?
Yeah, enormously so. More so than ever before, really. They're absolutely casting around, aren't they? I do feel it's not a million miles away, but it just isn't clicking. But I think against Switzerland, I think they've ended up playing 4 matches against similar-ish, to a greater or lesser degree, kinds of opposition, and Switzerland are probably slightly different. And whether there would be a possibility of it working better against better teams, I think there is that, and I think often they're not a million miles away. Little passes that are going astray. I think England are obviously capable of a couple of moments where that does come off, like we've seen with a couple of the offside goals that England have scored, which have been good moves, clearly offside. But if they can put those sort of moves together, I think this is a match against Switzerland. I think there's an awful lot tied up in this match in terms of everything that surrounds it. In that, I think Switzerland could be 3-0 up in half an hour if England perform the same way. But similarly, I think England could be 2-0 up in 20 minutes in this match. I think that the pressure that's involved in this, and I think they're interesting opponents for England and Switzerland. It's not like it's England playing against France in the quarterfinal in Qatar back in 2022. England, it's like two nearly teams are playing each other. So there's a massive pressure on Switzerland as well. Looking back, the way that Switzerland went out of the last World Cup, beaten 6-1 by Portugal in the last 16. So, what did they learn from that? And the fact that at the Euros last time round, they're involved in 2 penalty shootouts in the knockout stages. So they beat France on penalties, then go out to Spain on penalties. And that's recent history. A lot of the players, the Swiss players who are involved in that, are involved in this. So I think mentally, psychologically, there's a great deal going on. And my natural conclusion from all of that is that I think there has to be a very, very good chance of this going all the way to penalties.
Oh, I can't do penalties. They are the worst. I can only imagine what it's like commentating over them.
Yeah, there've been some. Yeah, it's that is quite stressful as well. Yeah.
Do you
Switzerland have...
Go on.
Sorry, Sam, go on.
We touched on it before. I was saying how much I'd struggled to stop my biases creeping through and all that. I'm just wondering how you keep so because I don't know how you keep so neutral in the games, or is it just through practice?
Well, I think a lot of that is kind of ingrained in us. That it's a big thing, as you're probably aware, the BBC, this impartiality thing that I'm very well aware, as I've said earlier, about the Champions League, that if I'm covering a match involving one of the home nations, if it's international, then you're aware of the fact that the vast majority of the audience will be behind that team. And obviously there'll be some who don't want to do well, but I think the vast majority are. But at the same time, you've just got to be fair. You've got to call it as it is. I feel that there's a responsibility to my employers, the BBC, to do it that way. And the same way as if things go very well, that the vast majority of people will be absolutely loving it and in full celebration mode. So therefore, you want to be able to reflect that as well. But I don't find that too difficult because I've done it for such a long time. It's more the internal feeling, I think, how I feel about it. But I think that's a good thing. That's a good emotion because that gets me up for it. And again, I'm so conscious the other night in that last 10 minutes of normal time that I'm very much thinking about what am I going to say. So as well as commentating what's happening, I'm thinking, what am I going to say when this happens and they go out now? I want to be able to sum that up because I know that as well as that being used on the night, that's clearly going to be what's used for time memorial to reflect how things finished. So I've got a lot of thoughts going on in my head about what I'm going to say, which fortunately I haven't had to use yet.
Well, let's hope you don't have to use them at all. And I think just finally, just to kind of round up our little Euros chat is, you said earlier on about if we went out in the last round, it would have been a failure, which obviously it would have been. What is anything but winning the Euros going to be a failure for Gareth Southgate this tournament, do you think?
Yeah, got to win it. But I felt that beforehand. I felt that before the tournament just because of the feeling that there was. But it's interesting, when I tend to interview them the day before the match, so we're not down. My group here, which is in Essen, we're not down with them at Blankenheim where they're based. We've got a different part of the team there. But then when they come to us and come to the match, so I've been seeing him and whichever player it is before the match and then after the match, and he's remarkable for someone who's at right in the centre of this storm. And as you probably know, he said that he cuts himself off from everything happening outside, but I don't think you can completely cut yourself. You will have an awareness of what's being said on the outside. But the first thing I thought when he came over to me after the match on Sunday night was, and in fact, I think I said to him, I can't believe that he is as calm as he is. You know, there just seemed this determination that they are going to stubbornly do it their way. And before the matches, he has been incredibly consistent, same as he always has been. That's how he is. And, you know, I think there is that. I think that is that feeling that this is it. This is the last time. And he is effectively saying, I don't care what the noise is on the outside. This is how we're doing it.
I just wanted to ask, because Bellingham, I don't know if you've met him or interviewed him, but I watched him on the pitch and he has this aura about him. And if you have, I just want to know, does this kind of energy resonate around him in real life as well, in day-to-day life?
Yeah, I would say so. He is used sparingly in terms of what he does around England. So we see a lot of Harry Kane. I think I've interviewed him already 4 times at this tournament. Harry Kane, Declan Rice, Kyle Walker, Kieran Trippier, those senior players. But Bellingham is very, you know, he's still 21, but you know, eminently capable of putting into words what he feels. You know, mature beyond his years. But I think, you know, Sunday was I said long in advance of this tournament that if England were going to do anything here, then it's stating the bleeding obvious, but they need Kane and Bellingham, who are the 2 leading lights, to perform and deliver. And, you know, that's what happened on Sunday, even though I know that their all-round performances are being scrutinised.
Do you think Bellingham has any chance of the Ballon d'Or this year, or obviously maybe hinging on England's performances? But
I think if England were to win this, you know, he's already played, even though, you know, I think the feeling is that people want more from his performance. You know, he's already been, you know, part of it in you know, such an unforgettable way on Sunday night. And if they win it, if they go all the way, then you would have to think that he would be at the centre of things, because that's what players of that level do, isn't it? That's what England have lacked, isn't it? The man who will step up and do the Ronaldo, Messi, Mbappe thing, and that's that was right out of that playbook, wasn't it, to do what he did on Sunday?
And we've finally got that man. Kind of moving away from England, so we can talk more about you as a commentator, you in the sports media, in the industry itself. You've got quite an interesting story, I think, anyway, of how you got into the media in the first place and into sports media. So for those listening, for Sam who might not know, how do you get into the media? What was your path in?
Yeah, so that interesting background is a farming background. So I grew up in the hills of Northumberland, Hill Farm. I was the youngest of 4 brothers. Long way youngest as well. So anyone who grows up in those sort of circumstances does spend a lot of time on their own, which I did. And you know, this job, I spent a lot of time on my own. And actually, I always think that this job is very like, my dad was a hill farmer, so you spend lots and lots of time off on the hills, you know, on your own. So there's a lot of time to think. And I think even though they are vastly and dramatically different jobs, I do feel that my job is very similar to the job that my dad did in terms of the psychological side of things. But, you know, hill farm does not work for everyone, certainly not work for 4 sons. And I was always directed primarily by my mother to look for something else. We're sportsman family. And, you know, this was the route that I chose really from quite a young age. This was the kind of thing that I wanted to get into. Did a lot of work experience when I was at school, and did a bit of hospital radio as well. Went to university, did my course there, played a lot of football there, ran the football club at university, and then straight into postgrad and did radio journalism. So I was working in news and sport, and eventually over the years moved more to specialise in sport, and then in football, got my move to the BBC, and then moved to London as a producer actually. So I was very much seen as someone on the other side of the microphone when I first started at BBC Radio Sport in London. But things changed, and I remember being sat down by my editor in an office in London, and him saying, "I know we brought you in as a producer, but I think we might have got that one wrong." So yeah, and off I went, really.
And here you are now. You say you play football. What position? What position did you play?
It's goalkeeper. So,
Goalkeeper.
Yeah, that was where I played, with not to any great degree of success, I have to say. But no, we had a great time. As I always say to anyone, I always say to young broadcasters, I think it is important. And in fact, that was advice I was given by Christopher Martin Jenkins, great cricket commentator, who said to me when I had a chat with him when I was probably around about your age, and he said, if you can, play sport as long as you can, because it gives you an appreciation for what it is that you're broadcasting on, whatever level it happens to be. there are lots of similarities.
Do you remember the first moment or first thing that kind of set you down the path of sports commentary? Because I struggle to see the correlation, and I'd be very intrigued where it went from farming to.
Yeah, I do. I was given no great encouragement at school, really, to go down there, because, as I always think, it feels like, I'm not quite sure how I went from that to this, because all my family generations really is farming. If you go back generally, they're all farm. It's all farming. So it's quite an odd departure for me to be doing this. But I always had that enthusiasm and determination and ambition, I suppose, to go into sports journalism, stroke broadcasting. So it probably was writing I was thinking of initially. But I loved so much about the broadcasting of sport, whether it was on the radio or on the television. And I remember in my last year at university going to the careers people, and I do remember very clearly in that the careers advisor saying to me when I was telling him all of this, and he said, "Have you ever thought about radio sports commentary?" And I suppose I had, but it was only when he really crystallized it that I remember thinking, do you know what? That is exactly what I would like to do.
Yeah. Do you think? Because I come from quite a big family of 3 brothers as well. I was just thinking, do you think being the youngest of 4 brothers, are there any skills that kind of helped you with commentary from that?
Massively so. And were you the youngest as well?
I'm the oldest, so I kind of got the other spectrum.
You had the hard bit, and so
Yeah,
I've got quite a few friends, strangely enough, who are the youngest of quite a big number, and I think that is a cushy number.
Straight up to my little brother.
Yeah, you're very much left to get on and do your own thing. I think when you're the youngest of a big number, and there's no pressure. I think, because everything gets you just sort of find your own way, and there are so many people who are there to look after you, really, and make sure everything's all right. So I think that's a big help, in what I do in my mindset, really, my approach to life, my attitude. I don't get too upset about anything ever. So
I can't wait to show my youngest brother this. I'm sure it'll make him laugh a lot. You won't agree, of course,
but it does help, Sam, because I mean, in this job there are so many, in inverted commas, frustrations.
Yeah.
Things don't go. Things go wrong all the time, as you probably already know in your early experiences of broadcasting. Things go wrong all the time, every day, every time you're on the air, and I think an even personality helps you to deal with that.
Yeah. Just out of interest as well, do you follow a English football club or anything in specific, a team in specific?
Strangely enough, I actually don't.
Is it?
Yeah, and that's what actually makes it interesting, I find, with England, in that I feel invested in the way that I don't actually for when I cover domestic football. So I'll have my see, when I was growing up, I would really sort of dot about between teams. So at various times there'd be teams that I liked, and I used to go and watch Carlisle which was one of the closest clubs. So I watched Carlisle certainly for a couple of seasons, but never particularly identified with Carlisle the place. So you would go and watch Carlisle United, but while I was watching them for a period of time, I suppose I would then have supported them. As soon as I didn't do that, and that's, I think, at the point when I went away to university, really, I had no further interest in Carlisle other than the sort of passing interest like I would in any other club. It was almost, it was kind of like what the way that I grew up there. I did have a very, very wide interest and was massively interested in international football. Was such a big. That's why it's such a thrill for me when I come to the World Cup or the Euros, because that meant so much to me when I was growing up. These tournaments have absolutely marked my life, and I would have interest in a general way. And I was a huge cricket fan as well when I was growing up. You see, so if I supported a sporting team when I was growing up, it was I would probably say the England cricket team would be my number one. So yeah, but it does help. It helps as a commentator in the national media. I feel that it is a big help that I don't have a particular axe to grind or agenda.
I can imagine it helps you maintain that sort of unbiased point of view, which you need, especially whilst working within the BBC. Have you ever thought about going into cricket commentating?
Yeah, I did a little bit of that at one stage. So I went on a Test match special tour to Sri Lanka, did a World Cup in South Africa, did a bit of domestic cricket as well. This was sort of early 2000s. Which I thoroughly enjoyed. Doing the tour to Sri Lanka, which was a 6-week tour, was one of the absolute thrills of my professional life. That massively ticked box 1A, and was a brilliant experience. But I just think I couldn't do both cricket and football, and actually football just suits me better. Covering football is, it was sort of a lifestyle choice really, as much as anything else, and cricket is all consuming.
Right. Okay. What would you? So you've had quite a lot. We've had a long career in sports commentating, a very esteemed career. You follow in England, you follow domestic, you follow Champions League. It's incredibly impressive to anybody who looks in. Have you got a standout match, a standout experience where you've thought this is exactly why I wanted to do this?
I think probably that last World Cup final. I think that takes some beating, which was, 20 minutes to go, whatever it was, when Argentina were 2-0 up. It looked as though it was almost straight. But what happened over the course of the remaining hour or whatever it was of that match was to be there in what was an amazing location, actually, that stadium in Qatar, and trying to put that into words, and there was almost too much going on there. Messi, Mbappe, Argentina, France. That's probably the one that I would pick out. But honestly, it's amazing how often that stands out, because it was the World Cup final and that happened. So I think it's very difficult to top that. But the matches I see, I feel very fortunate that I just see so many of them. I see so many matches that are just gripping and dramatic. I thought the FA Cup semi-final between Manchester United and Coventry this season was right up there in terms of the drama, what you want as a commentator. So that's what I think of. What do I want in a match? Ideally, I want great excitement, lots of goals, and also I want it to go roller coaster, one way, then the other, back again, and you want it, a little bit of controversy as well. It doesn't do any harm, and that had it all. But it's amazing how often that happens.
Would you say they're like easier to commentate on than the 0-0s?
Dead easy. The England games here have been quite difficult to commentate on because there's not much happening. So that puts more onus on you too. Whereas if it's exciting, you're in the flow.
But for two people, just kind of, obviously we're not commentary, but in a similar kind of vein as commentary podcasting, I just wondered if there was any kind of tips you could have for either preparation or like what you do before like a big commentary gig. Yeah,
I think so. Certainly from a commentary point of view, I think more now than ever before there's an absolute mountain of statistics and facts, numbers, lots of statistical analysis. And I look at that and I just think from a broadcasting point of view, when you see that so-and-so has got X number for this, he's got X number for that, X number for the other, he's this, he's that, he's the other. I just think I think it's very difficult to take that in a broadcasting sense. I think you can take it in if you're reading it. I think it's very difficult to take in a lots of numbers for a listener listening to broadcasting. So therefore, my advice would be, I think it's the words that are most important. If you're a broadcaster, very simple piece of advice, but the kind of words that you use and things that it's human interest. Human interest is what sparks people and finding out things that they didn't know before.
It's been fantastic. I don't know. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Sam?
I think we've done a pretty good round, commentary on everything.
I was going to say, John, is there anything you'd like to say to sort of close us out with?
Yeah, well, just carrying on from that, really, from a commentary point of view, I think the most important thing that you can come up with is things that your own imagination. I think that's the anyone can use any of those numbers because they're all available. Any commentator will have all of those numbers, but what sets people apart is what comes out of your head and imagination, individual thoughts that no one else is going to come up with. That's what I try to do, and occasionally we'll come up with something that's vaguely in the ballpark of what I want to do.
I think you seem to be doing a pretty good job of it. I can't lie. So.
I think that kind of rounds us off nicely. So, John, thank you ever so much for joining us.
Nice to be able to do that. That's filled half an hour in on a day Thursday afternoon in Germany. So my pleasure.
Yes, thank you ever so much, and very best of luck going forward. Hopefully, we'll hear you commentating for at least a few more matches whilst you're over in Germany.
We'll see what happens on Saturday.
Fingers crossed.
Can we get a quick score prediction for Saturday?
England win on penalties.
England win on penalties.
Can't do that to us.
What about
you heard it here first.
What about you?
I think just for my mental stability, I have to just say 2-0 England. I don't think I could go through penalties after the last week.
Problem is, Sam, I think every single match here, we've talked about this kind of thing on the way to the match. And I think in our vehicle, every single match, people have generally said, 2-0 England. It's not.
Hasn't been yet.
No.
Yeah.
Mate, that's got to change at some point. Maybe on Saturday we'll get a 2-0 England finally.
Maybe.
I think maybe an extra time win. Maybe a 2-1.
Just like a bog standard win. That's all I want in my life.
That's all we want. That's all we want. Yeah, a bog standard win. Play a little bit better.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think a good performance that'll boost us on for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you ever so much, and
thank you.
Very best of luck, and we'll hopefully speak to you again soon.
Nice one. No, thanks to you both.